Howdy y'all, welcome to Hazenboro Craftworks here in the Hazenboro Homestead and our humble whiskey room. I'm the Alchemist. Well, we've beaten another week of cold and wind here in South Dakota, and we're doing it by warming winter with whiskey. First week of doing so, we did it with 110 proof and up to just up to 120 proof. Last week we did it with some 120 proof, but we stayed under 130. Well, this week we're bumping it up a notch to those 130 proof whiskeys to really warm us up as we're battling that winter weather. And this week, Monday, I chose a Tattersall Rye, 100% rye whiskey. And I picked this one because it comes from the neighbor state, Minnesota. And this Tattersall Rye is a 100% rye, 85% Minnesota grown rye, and 15% of that malted rye. And I picked it because it's got, you know, kind of a fun story for me. A couple of buddies, Dan and John, they started out, well, with maybe not so fun of a venture, kind of a stinky venture maybe. And they started out, well, they've been friends for most of their lives. And they started out on a venture tanning hides. And the smell alone of that, as the story goes anyway, as I looked it up on the internet, searching or trying to see what I can find about this distillery, and I came across a story. As the story goes, the smell alone was enough to make them rethink their choice in business ventures. And as they rethought that choice, they decided to maybe go back to what both of them really knew better. And Dan, I believe it was a pretty good bartender, knew his spirits. And John, if I recall the story right, was pretty good at finances. And not too far north of them, there was quite a bit of rye. And so they thought, why not take that rye and instead of cutting it with corn, like most distilleries do, let that rye shine and make a good, spicy rye whiskey. And that's what they did. And so they started in Minnesota, actually. And, you know, one of the sad parts of the story maybe is, or another stinky part of the story is, as they grew, and I guess that's kind of a happy part too, as they grew, the Minnesota laws wouldn't let them keep their distillery in Minnesota, so they had to move across the river, St. Croix River, just into Wisconsin. So as you see in the bottle here, it says that it's proudly distilled and bottled by Tattersall Distilling Company in River Falls, Wisconsin. So they had to move just across the river, and then they grew there in an old Shopco building, according to what I found. And now they've grown, so happy story that they were able to grow. And this one is a cask strength bottle at 131.2 proof, so comes in perfect for our warming winter with whiskey and our 130 proof week. And this whiskey has a number 4 char, so aged in white oak barrels with a number 4 char. And I was a bit skeptical on this because it's aged for only just over 3 years. It's got some nice color, you can see there in the bottle. So it's got that nice color. Being up north in northern Minnesota, the extremes in temperature, that extreme cold, and then they do get some warm summers too, kind of like we do here in South Dakota. And what Dan and John found is that those extreme in temperatures really force that juice in and out of that oak to provide some good flavor profile. So let's see what Tattersall gives us here in this 131 proof rye, being in that barrel for just a little over 3 years. Let's give it a nose. Now I know this is a high proof, so as we talked about last week, as I got into the 120s, and my desire to nose these quite heavily, can be difficult for me not to cough on all that proof, but we'll give it a shot. Right on the first nose, with all that ethanol in there, first thing I get is a little bit of pepper. But I'm going to go in for my sips on this, just to get my palate and my nose working together a little bit here. So let's see what we got. Definitely some heat with that 131 proof. And this definitely dries my palate right off the bat. But there is a bit of nice butteriness to it too, so that's interesting to me. How much it dried my palate instantly, but then this bit of butteriness took over. I'm going to go in for another sip here quick. Yeah, that butteriness is there, really nice. Coats the glass nice, runs down a little bit quick. Now I'm developing, from that number 4 char, I'm developing a bit of a, I'm getting more of a coffee mocha note that develops. A bit easier to nose now. Interesting. I am getting the rye spice quite easily right now, and that pepper that I got initially, no longer present, but a very nice developed sweet rye spice, which is curious to me because on a little over 3-year rye, I would not expect that sweet rye spice note. Not a rye candy, but just a nice sweet rye spice. Really, really pleasant actually. Still have that coffee. And it's not overly sweet on the palate. There's more coffee, and if you can imagine it, maybe even a bit of mocha, like a touch of that, touch of maybe chocolate, more of a mocha, coffee mocha. And that heat just gets the tip of the tongue, but warms you all the way down. I mean, it's warming. And the sweetness is hidden by that dryness of that coffee and mocha mixture. And then the palate dries with that barrel char in there. Actually, in my opinion, quite nice, especially for just a 3-year rye. And I love that proof on this. It really hits nice, it warms nice. Perfect for a winter rye. And actually, I'm tempted, I don't know if I'll have time this week, but I'm really tempted to do a quick short on a cocktail, even though this is like this is about what did I pay? Just shy of 60 some dollars for this, I believe is what it was. So not too bad. But I have a cocktail in mind right away with this one. So for like I said, a 3.5-year rye to develop this quickly, really nice. But I'll warn you, if you're someone that is against a whiskey that dries your palate, this one dries you up. But all the other flavors in this are really pleasant together, and that's quite nice. Not bad. Well done, Tattersall. Well done. And as you all know, I'd love to have you all coming back around. So please, take it easy. Don't drink and drive. Cheers.